Not like HAPPS. All
No.
right. I just want to welcome anybody here watching it live or watching the replay. I got with me today True Seeker 777. We're going to have an open discussion on various topics ranging from social media, politics, religion, whatever floats your boat. Please drop your comments in the box if you want to participate. And yeah, let's do this. I want to go ahead and True Seeker, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and where people can get a hold of you at?
Okay. My name's TrueSeeker777. You can follow me on HAPPS, TikTok, um, same screen name, and then I believe Twitch as well. TrueSeeker777. Um, yeah, that's
All
where they can
right.
follow me at.
Cool. And everybody who wants to follow or find me, just watch the ticker. And so you can find me on Twitch, Facebook, and my email. Oh, I'm streaming this to Twitter and I didn't put my Twitter handle up there. Wait, no, I did. It is. It's on there as well. So, all right. I guess first topic, we're going to talk about social media. What context, I'm not sure. But if you want to go ahead and open the floor with it, man, go ahead.
All right. So I guess we could start with Elon Musk's tweet where he said, let me see if I can find the exact tweet, but it was something along the lines of, it's right here. Why? Sorry, dude. Um, he talked about, he asked in a tweet, do you think that Twitter is undermining free speech, basically? Just to sum it up, I can find the exact quote, but that was a couple of days, I think, before he bought all those shares of Twitter.
What
Um,
was the tweet again? I
it was
actually got
some
his Twitter account up right now.
It was something about do you think do you think that Twitter is undermining free speech? I think is what it is. You're welcome.
Hmm.
Let me see if I can find it because it was just a couple of days ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on his
Um,
April 9th. But just my quick answer, I don't think social media underlines free speech at all. I mean, if we're talking about free speech as defined by the First Amendment, I don't think social media sites actually have anything to do with that. Matter of fact, I think the fact that companies are allowed to regulate who is on their platform and is not on their platform is actual free speech.
mhm.
I mean, they're a private company after all. How come it only goes back to April 9th?
I
All
found
right.
it. It says,
All right, cool. If you want to
uh,
share it up on the screen,
yeah,
go for it.
yeah. Let me see here. Share screen. Okay. Share screen. This
This guy
one.
puts a lot of weird freaking tweets up.
Yeah, it does. He's just a he's he's just a interesting character, I guess. So can you see that?
Here we go.
There you go.
Hmm.
So, free speech is essential to a functioning democracy. Do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle?
Mm, I don't. I think it's a bad question. I don't think TOSs has anything to do with free speech. And I say that again because when we talk about the First Amendment rights and our free speech rights, it's in contrast to what the government is and is not allowed to regulate us into or out of. It has nothing to do with private companies. So I think Elon Musk is way off base on that.
Well, um, I think that the founding fathers probably had no idea that there was going to be Twitter and
Hmm.
Instagram and all these things.
Agreed. Ah,
Um,
here it is. And he misspelled yes. Oh wait, no, that's the do you want an edit button poll. Oi, weirdo. Anyway,
yeah.
go ahead. The founding fathers.
I don't think that they had that, saw that coming. So I think that, excuse me, we should be able to have those same rights. Now, I see what you're saying as far as like, well, it's somebody's platform. They've bought all these servers. They have all this network. Um, that is excuse me, it's kind of like a privilege, right? Like, because,
Mhm.
you know,
It is a privilege. Absolutely, I
um,
agree.
but where it gets to a sticky situation is when you become like we were talking earlier with the TikTok. You can't really say anything because people are now trolling you, and you end up being banned live, or your thing goes and you get completely banned, right? Which one of my accounts did. They don't tell you now, like you said in Facebook. Okay, you tell me. At least you told me. At least you didn't go, whatever. And I know that there's different platforms, right? There's the StreamYard, HAPPS, Twitter, Twitch, all these, that have come up. So I think as a collective, I don't think you should be able to like. It's the same thing with, I think, our speech for me is like yelling fire in a movie
Mhm.
theater, right? Like I don't think you should be able to do anything like that. Um, but I mean, we have people like the protesters, right? Like I don't agree with BLM. I don't agree with Hebrew Israelites. I don't agree with
Well,
the KKK.
now,
So,
when
but
we're talking about protests, I don't think that's on the
well,
same footing or the same rung of the ladder as social media sites.
so
So,
you
which
so you're
I'm okay with talking about protesting, but
no,
I
no, no.
just
But you're
I think
you're
it's two different subjects.
so you're saying that you shouldn't have the same free speech that you have when you're protesting or on
Mm-mm.
social media. Because here's my
No,
thing.
no, I'm saying
Stop, son.
protesting is a protected free speech activity. Saying what you want on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, TikTok. How come a lot of them starts with a T? Anyway, HAPS. Throw another one in there that doesn't start
Right.
with a T. Those are private companies. That's like when somebody owns their own home or their own brick and mortar building. You can't just waltz up in there and say and do whatever the hell you want. They have
Mhm.
rules against that on their private property in their private business. When people take to the streets and march and protest, they're doing it on public streets. They're doing it in opposition to the government, which is a First Amendment protected right. I'm not saying I'm against protesting BLM or anybody who wants to protest, even the truckers. I was okay with their protests. I think they were wrong for what they were protesting for, but they still have the right to do it. Saying what you want on Twitter or anything, you don't have an absolute right. And you said it earlier. It's a privilege on Twitter. It's not a right. So.
We'll see, and I think for me, it's like, okay, um, there's a hypocrisy because you can tell me that you're gonna find me where I live, or I can't wait to find where bump into you where you're at, kind of thing. Like in the valley, I've had somebody say that, and you report it, and like nothing happens. But then my stuff gets banned when I'm having a conversation. So I think what
Oh, I
the
see what you're
problem
talking
is
about.
people are using it toward like for their advantage, right? Like so it's almost like politicians, but it's easier, right? Because it's a private entity. So you can be like,
Mm,
well, how about I give you a couple billion, whatever, million, $1 billion, and to help your company grow. And at that point, now they're in debt. So they're going to do whatever that individual gave them money not for, but now they have a say because again, it's like Elon and Twitter. You can't write him off now because now he's your biggest shareholder, 4 times the amount of Jack Dorsey,
mm-hmm,
right? And we all know he could have just probably flat out bought Twitter.
mm-hmm,
Um, but again, I think it's like the American way of like what I was saying with the protests. I don't agree with Black Lives Matter and the KKK and all these different groups, but I'm going to defend your right to say whatever you want
mm-hmm,
without harming people, right?
mm-hmm.
Without harming me to the death because if they take that right from you, they can take it from me, they can take it from you, and even though I don't agree, I'm still going to be like he should still be able to say that as long as he's not inciting violence
Now,
or
now, when you say that, in the context, do you mean that on social media or do you mean that in public?
Both. I think is it because I think that it kind of reciprocates into the social media because they're so big now. I mean, who doesn't have a Twitter? Who doesn't have a Facebook? Right?
I think people confuse Twitter for a public platform, um, while not realizing that it's not, and that it's a private platform that, that you have a privilege to use.
Hmm.
It's you don't have a right to Twitter, you don't have a right to Facebook, like at all. So I don't know. So I see it seems more of a conflation of protesting in a First Amendment protected way, as in, gathering together to redress the government, as opposed to trolling people on Facebook or Twitter.
Hmm.
I for one, I get temporarily banned on Facebook quite often. I never complain about it. A lot of my stuff is taken out of context, which um, I've actually challenged a couple and actually got my temporary ban revoked because they did take it out of context. But it happens. But I understand that in no ways Facebook, um, telling me that, or they're not restricting my right, because if I sit there on Facebook and say fuck the police, well, I can get temporarily banned on Facebook simply for saying the word fuck. But if I took a poster and I wrote fuck the police and went stood out on a public sidewalk, nobody can do anything to me because that is a First Amendment protected right. So if
Hmm.
Facebook isn't taking any of my rights, I'm just not allowed to say it on their platform. So there's the difference.
Well, here's the thing, and that's what I was saying is it's
Mm-hmm.
gotten so big and so influential. I mean, bro, like we all know that businesses have what? An Instagram, Twitter, and a Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
right? So those are at least the main three. Um, and again, it's like don't don't advertise that um like don't advertise like hey, you know, it's the world's I forget what Twitter used to say, but it was, something along the lines of hold on a second, I gotta look in the
While you're looking,
all right, sorry.
no, go ahead.
One quick second. I gotta
Yeah.
sorry, he's like in the garage somewhere. I'm like, bro,
Oh
what are
no,
you
you're
doing?
fine. I got kids. I get it. Um, so instead, okay, what's All right, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Now, I do sympathize with the idea that we are censored a little bit too much on social media. For example, Twitch, and I'm not streaming there tonight, so Twitch can go kiss my ass. But you're not allowed to say cracker in a disparaging way. Like you can't like we couldn't
Right.
call each other crackers. It completely goes way too far. Now, my question to you is, how do you feel about the idea of nationalizing social media? In other words, make it a public domain as if it were a sidewalk.
I think
Now
it's
that now now that now just a caveat that would actually come with the government taking control of and away from these tech media companies. So
well,
just
I I mean, here's the thing. And I was thinking about this. If you have see what are they going to do? Like let's take Elon Musk in the position he's in. Okay? Let's say
mhm,
now you are the biggest shareholder of Twitter
mhm.
and you say something against their terms and services. Is it a right or a privilege? Because you own the biggest amount of shares of that company. So what are they going to do to him now if he just and I'm not saying that like he's going to go crazy and say something to where he gets censored. But what if they do censor him?
Then I guess he'd probably join a board meeting.
But he and what's interesting is he turned that down.
Mhm.
sound like he was in the garage, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" I'm like looking towards the garage because the door's open. He's like, "I'm in the bathroom."
Oh, I
I'm
was
like,
like, excuse me. Wow, we've had a lot of change in the weather lately here. It's gone from like 70 degrees on Thursday to snowing today, and it's got my sinuses and head cold all messed
dude,
up. So
I don't miss
yeah,
Texas. I know where you're at, but I don't miss Texas. It was the same way. I'm like, you were cold like 3 hours ago. Now you're raining, and then later the sun's out for the last 2 hours of the day. Like, screw you and your bipolar weather.
yeah. Oh man, it's like that across the world. It seems I see people
Yeah.
from all different parts of the world calling wherever they live bipolar weather. So no, I get it. So hey, back to Elon Musk being on or turning like turned down the board. But to answer your question, if you were to do something against TOS, would it be a right or privilege violation? Um, I, that's a tough call. I mean, against the TOS, he would be in violation, but considering he owns uh, a controlling voice in the matter, I guess you can sit there and do what some cop precincts do and investigate themselves and find themselves innocent. So but and that's why I wanted to ask if we nationalized social media platforms and took that power away from those board members and brought it more for the people, of course, um, through government regulation, sort of say like public sidewalks, public parking lots, where we could say what we wanted without being censored, because it would be a First Amendment issue, because until, I mean, as long as these tech companies are privately owned, there's no First Amendment issue. A lot of people think it is, but if they were nationalized, or the scary S word, socialized, then people could make the argument, well, that's against my First Amendment when I got booted off of such and such media platform because it's owned by the government and regulated by the government, and taxpayer money takes care of it, and yada yada yada. That would be a free speech issue. Would you be on board for a social media outlet like that, like a nationalized one?
Where you're saying that like the government has a hand in it?
Mm-hmm.
No, because they have their hand in everything.
Well, no, they don't.
Because the way,
No,
because
no. Hold on,
here's
hold
what
on.
you
They hold on one second. They don't have their hand in everything because we're talking about social media that operates by their own private TOSs. Okay, see, okay. In other words, you can't have it both ways. You can't sit there and say the government. I don't want the government to have control over it, and at the same time complain about a free speech issue, because those, in order to be a free speech issue, it has to be within their public domain, which is basically owned by the government or the people of that government.
Mhm. So
So,
here's the thing: is the internet was like the last frontier to where you could put stuff up, you could do things as far as like the free speech. That's where people are getting, oh, well, how can you do this with your terms and services now
mhm,
when this whole time that it's been up, we weren't censored like that. Now, whether it's left side or the right side that's getting censored, because everybody has their own story, right? Whether
mhm,
something was taken out of context or they were just like, this violates it, get out of here.
mhm,
Um, Again, you say something that it's a private, but is it really? Is it? I mean, because if that's the
mhm.
case, then that means it can be bought by
It can,
certain
it can.
people.
Oh, absolutely, it
You know
can
what I
be.
mean?
But matter of fact,
Like again,
go ahead.
like I'll give you a couple million, and this is the narrative I want you to push. And I'm not saying right or left, but I'm just saying it's possible on all sides. So that's where I think it's become a problem and an issue. But you don't want too much of government in your life, right? Like you want to, like the American way was live your life the way, just like as long as I'm not hurting you, like that's how I feel. Even because I'm a Christian, so if I see a witch, I'm like, dude, as long as you're not like trying to cast spells on me and be weird and try like I'm whatever, dude, live your life. You're not affecting me, right? But when it comes down to sharing your thoughts, trying to have a platform that the three, right? Like maybe those three social media platforms need to be reassessed because they were pushing themselves with all these news, like the news, and then all of a sudden you get the fact checkers because people were challenging them and going, okay, well, you're like, they were almost saying like it was like a newspaper kind of thing. It was like a news outlet kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
Because you're censoring whatever side, and people can just under the table just be like, here's a couple $1 million, nobody will know. That's where I think it's a problem because really, if you're going to advertise for, oh, just come and like Twitter was, I wish I could, I wish I remember what it said, but it was something about just be yourself and this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, okay, well, if I try to share something with, like, let's say, I don't know, that questions 9/11, right? For
Mhm.
whatever reason, or something outlandish that people say conspiracy theory of like Bohemian Grove. Okay, why would you censor that? What's I'm just gonna look at you and go, you're crazy. Who cares, right? Like I'm not that invested, and I think that people need to realize that the internet was something that everybody looked at as like, man, it's free. Remember the net neutrality, and
Mhm.
they're like, oh, what's going on? Think about that. I mean, I had to come to the realization, and I know this might be off topic, but I had to come to the realization that the dark web isn't exactly what people say it is. It's the deep web, right? The dark web just means that they can't trace you. That's it.
Mhm.
The 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 deep web is something where you're like, and that's where you start seeing all that shady stuff. So I think people need to go, okay, we need to adapt to the times and say, okay, you should be able to not be censored. Like, I don't know what I did on TikTok. They just told me I was hateful behavior. You didn't tell me what it was. You just said, here's the terms and services. I read the terms and services, and I was like, I can't, I mean, excuse me, I can't do it, right? But they're so a part of our culture now. You have to hold them to a little bit different of a standard because everybody has a Facebook on the back of their, bro, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, that's the only
Ooh,
one they're putting right there. I mean, this one even has like a smart label on it.
Do you watch John Oliver by any chance? Are you familiar who John
I know,
Oliver?
I do. Yeah, I do know who he is.
He recently had a segment about data brokers. You know what data
Mhm.
brokers are?
No, it sounds familiar, but I'm not too sure.
Yeah, so data brokers, just name one company that I remember off the top of my head is I think it's Epsilon. What they do is they buy data from like Facebook and or they collect that data, that metadata on us, those little itty bitty pieces, and they sell those. And so like Facebook will give access or sell that data to these data brokers, and then those data brokers can then sell it to any private company or private entity, like whatever they want. I think that's dangerous, and I think that's something our government can do, because back in, I want to say it was the 70s or the 90s. Oh gosh, I forget what it was, but there was a congressperson who was renting movies from Blockbuster or something, and somebody recognized that person as a congressperson, and literally bought his rental history from that video rental place. And once that was found out, Congress made a move, and they quashed that ability for people to do that. It was like Video Rental Protection Act from I think it was in the 90s. It had to have been in the 90s. Now, in that way, it kind of like mirrors upon this whole data broker stuff going on now. So I think our Congress should step in and quash that. I think that's one horrible thing that's our social media and businesses do that's totally egregious toward our society. So
Well, that's interesting because that's what I thought it was. Okay.
mhm.
So to explain to everybody that watches this, that's your digital footprint. So if you start getting a bunch of scam calls and a bunch of things like um, onto your phone, it's
Mhm.
because of that, right? Like you need to, some companies you actually have to tell them, take all my information off your website, right?
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, you can tell we play Nerf guns. Where's your dinosaur?
Hell yeah, Nerf for nothing, man.
Yeah, dude, look, it's the little bitty ones, the one shots.
Oh, those are the
Look,
best. You can hide those and like hide four of those on you. Have you big two like automatic Nerf? You got your little
yes,
backups. Hell
these
yeah.
these fly so far, dude. I was like,
Mm.
this little thing's probably just um, but yeah, it's interesting because you want me to show him? He's so happy about this. It's one of the like smash things, I guess. He had to like dig out of it, like dig it out of some slime, right? Remember? What are you doing? Are you sure?
Oh no,
Um,
my kids are so much older, but I do remember playing little dinosaurs and GI Joes and
he's uh,
Barbies.
he's trying to show you, but um, I think we do run into a lot of issues where it's like, okay, something's got to give to keep from. I just think it's weird that you can't, like, people can just ban you for no reason and then be like, who cares? You just violated our terms and services.
Hmm.
So who's to say he? Okay. Um. So for me, it's like we have to figure out how to adapt. Maybe not all these like smaller ones, but when you have so much influence, like Facebook and Instagram, and I mean, Instagram is owned by Facebook.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like an oligarch now. Like, okay, because they bought everybody out. Because remember, they bought out WhatsApp too.
I never
So,
messed with WhatsApp. I always thought
so
WhatsApp was
it's weird.
shady.
Yeah, it's
Is
just
it?
weird. Yeah. It's supposed to be like in end-to-end encryption and things like that, but um, that's how you end up getting all these scam calls and people, because all your information. And that's kind of what really boils down to now is we have so much information coming at us. We don't really know what's real and what's not, right?
Mm.
Because we have to vet that information. Like, how true is it? How 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 much, like, how high of a standard do you hold this to? Is it geared more towards your bias? How do you take your bias out of something when you're looking at a certain article or something that's, some type of research that somebody has done, like peer review, and say,
Hmm.
okay, I'm not going to just can you give me a moment real quick?
Yeah,
i'm
yeah,
gonna
yeah. Go
i'm
ahead.
gonna grab him something real quick so he can.
Actually, I tell you what. Let's go ahead and take a few minute break. I'm gonna go make some tea.
Okay.
I'll put some background music on, and I'll go ahead and put up the banner. Go
Okay.
ahead and mute your mic, and let's see. It's 11:37 now. About, I don't know, 10 minutes. Is that good? Okay, cool. All right. I think I have music I can play in the background. Do 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 do. Let's do some. Let's do some rock. All right, you awesome listeners and replayers. We'll be back in 10. Thank you. All right, all right, all right. We are back, or at least I am back at the moment. Our guest, True Seeker, is still out momentarily. Hopefully, he'll be back in a minute or so. Um, yeah, so until then, I want to thank everybody for stopping by and listening to the first segment, discussion on social media. Hit on a little bit of a Elon Musk tweet and our interpretation of the First Amendment and how it applies to social media. So, all right, True Seeker, where are you, buddy? And it was always a great time to make some tea. I want to thank Whiskey 1975 coming through. I see you down there. Thank you for stopping by. Always great to see a homie in the chat. Hmm. All right. Yeah, he's still not with us. Hmm. Well, I'll go ahead and put this out there. If anybody has a conversation they like to discuss with me, please, you can reach me on Twitch. You can reach me on Twitter, Facebook, email me, or if you have a different opinion or you feel I'm wrong on something I said tonight, feel free to to drop your comments, your emails, or your tweets. I'm open to being wrong. Absolutely. I guess he needed more than 10 minutes. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and give him some more time. I'll go ahead and throw. Oh, throw on some tunes. Oh, instrumentals. Ah, oh no, hey, he's back. He is back. Heck yeah.
My bad, dude. I was
Oh
trying
no,
to.
you're good.
He's like, help. Um.
No, I think
Me
I'm
either.
gonna try to. I think about every 30, 35 minutes, I'd like to try to take a 10, 15 minute break anyway, especially if it's going to go for a while. I mean, we're human and we have necessities.
Right. Yeah, that's yeah, it's yeah, but what we were talking about, I mean, that's been just something that I've what'd you say? I had to put Charlie Brown on, bro. I raised him with all the old stuff, you know. Like you're gonna
Oh,
watch the cool,
nice.
look, you're gonna watch the cool stuff, you know.
Ooh, do you have them? One of my favorite cartoons growing up was just about anything from Hanna Barbera.
Dude, I let him watch just pretty much like all the like if you can like if you think about it, he's probably watched it at least once or twice. Like I remember, what was it? The he watched He Man one time. He watched like the old school like Transformers cartoon. He likes that one. The I don't think it was I don't know if it was the original Ninja Turtles cartoon, but like I think it was like in the 80s.
That's the original one, yeah.
Amazing. I'm like, bro, you're watching that one. We're not watching this nonsense. Before he watched the new Ninja Turtles, he watched the
Hmm.
old Ninja Turtles, like the movie.
Do you know who Chuck Lorre is, right? Or Chuck Lorre? He did
Mhm.
Two and a Half Men and Big Bang Theory. He's like he's the one. I'm pretty sure this is right. Please, somebody double check me, but I'm pretty sure he's the one who wrote the theme song for the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoons in the '80s.
Oh wow,
Yeah, yeah.
nice.
So
That
little
was a good one.
little factoid there. So all right, well, at the beginning of the hour, we just like I mentioned earlier, we discussed social media. I was gonna go ahead and maybe turn up the conversation spiciness up a bit.
Okay.
How about two cis white men talking about abortion? What's your take on the current abortion situation?
Um. Well, here's my thing. It's weird because I'm in like a weird position, being Christian. I'm like, dude, absolutely not. But in the Bible, it also says to not entangle yourself in other people's affairs. So if I'm not a part of your life and you haven't asked me for advice, what business is it of mine, right? That being said, I do think that like it's like somebody said earlier, and I forget who said it. He said, but it's like, you have somebody that can't take care of a kid, but they keep having kids. Like, stop having kids. I
Mm.
think it's the same way with the abortion. Like, okay, one, two, okay. But when you start getting up, like maybe, you know, excuse me, to a point to where you're like, dude, this has become something that you just do. My main issue with the culture now with that would be I remember watching a girl she was on a college campus, and she said, "Oh, well, if me and my boyfriend I end up pregnant, um, uh, I'm gonna have an abortion because
Mhm.
look at all the stuff I have in front of me. I still have this, I still have that." And I'm like, "You want to know the solution? Don't have sex. Simple."
I don't think abstinence is necessarily the answer to it all.
Uh,
My opinion on it is it's honestly between the person that's pregnant or just conceived. I think yeah, conceived is the right word. It's between them and their healthcare provider. That's it. I mean, I don't. It could be they could have 15 abortions. It's of no consequence to my personal life,
mhm.
and I think it's about bodily autonomy and the freedom to make that choice. So
I think that they also have to. The biggest thing for me on abortions that nobody has mentioned is the mental health of the women that go through this. My sister had one, right? And
hmm
mentally it drains you because think about it. If I remember I when I first learned about what postpartum depression was,
hmm
I was watching this video or this TV show, and she's like, I don't know, I just wanted to pick up my baby and slam him up against the wall. You know what I mean? And it's like, what? And I didn't realize that the hormonal imbalance causes them to not think right. They can have postpartum depression up to a year and a half after the abortion or the birth. So you can't say that that doesn't exclude having an abortion. So these women have to deal with that in a certain way, right? Like they
hmm
just can't be like, "Hey, I'm just going to go get an abortion." Again, my stance is do what you want. It's not my problem.
hmm
If you ask me, not like I don't think it's morally right, but again, it's again in living in that free country,
hmm
meaning whatever, dude, like you're not hurting me. Like it doesn't affect me, in on that level. Um but I just don't think that it's right for them to like where I kind of draw the line on abortions is when they're like, "Oh, well, it doesn't matter when. At any point in the pregnancy, you can have an abortion." And it's like, okay. Um
I
but
think no, I think I know what you're saying. I think there's definitely an argument um, for keeping the baby because of viability reasons when it reaches a certain trimester. Like I think that's actually even recognized by the courts, but there are exceptions to even to that. And again, that's usually because it's a medical issue between and that's something that's brought up between the doctor and the patient. So I don't even because I know there's this big scare about late term abortions, all the way up to like uh, I the number escapes me how many weeks a woman is pregnant. I apologize, and when I say woman, I mean a person who can bear children. Let me be a little bit more gender neutral. I apologize. Um, but it's I think from the moment of conception to the moment of abortion or to the moment of birth, it's between the doctor and the patient. So because there are medical incidences or situations, I guess, right, would probably be a better word, where even right as the child is being born, there's medical situations where it's life or death for the child, it's life or death for the mother, or both. And a decision has to be made in that moment, and that's between the doctor and the mother, the person giving birth. So,
Well, here's the thing for me, right? What percentage does that make up, right? Because
what do you mean?
from
Oh, like you talking about like the necessity of a late term abortion? What percentage?
right, like what?
Oh, it's
Because
very low. It's very low. It's
see,
almost non significant.
so you think about that, and then you okay, well, how many people are having abortions, right? Because at some point, for me, it becomes almost just uh, like a birth control pill, right? Like we know we have this option.
Hmm.
When it's like
Well,
it's almost
abortion.
they're evading their consequence to their actions, right? They're like,
Ooh,
eh.
you think having a child's a consequence? I mean,
No, it's not a consequence, but it's a result. Sorry, consequence maybe
it's
wasn't
yeah.
the right word, but it is a result because we both
Hmm.
can agree that with every action there's a reaction,
Hmm.
right? So there's something that happens due to your action. So that means
Hmm.
if you lay down and you have sex and God forbid the condom breaks,
Hmm.
sorry, dude. Like my son, oops, he's a blessing, he's a miracle baby, you know.
I
And
love
what I
all my
mean,
children, but one of them was
yeah,
a oops baby too. But I still love them, none the different. But
you know what I mean? So it's
I
like,
don't.
what did
Go
you
ahead.
do when you had like your first kid? Because I know it's like it when you when you first find out for me when you first find out like you're gonna be a dad, like you're like it's so surreal. You're like, dude, I don't, and you have all
Hmm.
these thoughts, you know, and
Hmm.
I want people to make an informed decision. So like if like
I
what did you
totally
think?
agree, and I think that's why it should be left up between the doctor and the person who's carrying the baby. I mean, I think that's the only way to come to an informed decision. I don't think there's any way or any other avenue outside that for anybody to come to an informed decision.
Right. Well, and but here's what I here's the thing though, right? Like like how did you like did you feel like how did you feel when it was time to be like okay, I'm having a kid, right?
Hmm.
Like you would just most people go, you know what, I'm gonna it's a scary thing even when you're like, dude, I'm gonna take care of this little human, right?
Hmm.
Like I you know what I mean? Like you're like, and then even when the kid's in front of you, because like you said, there's
Hmm.
always those um, things that could happen. Because it happened with my son. That's why I said he was a miracle baby, and I don't mean it like in a like that way of like how people just kind of lightheartedly say it. Oh, it's my miracle baby. No, he literally his heart rate dropped like to 40 beats per minute.
Hmm.
Like, and when they pulled him out, bro, he was blue.
Hmm.
It was either you get him you get your wife because they were like, "Oh, she, dilated. We're gonna come back in. We're gonna get this thing delivered." Okay, cool. They come in, and thank God they did when they did, and they're all like all frantically unplugging stuff. And then next thing you know, we're being whisked down the hallway, and nobody told me what was going on. They don't have
Hmm.
time. They don't have time to be
Hmm.
like, "Sir," it's like, you know what I mean? Because and that's what the doctor said was it was one of two ways. Either you weren't gonna have your son if we didn't do a C-section or your wife wouldn't have,
Hmm.
so
Survived.
yeah, so it's like, I mean, I get those, right? But there
Hmm.
are those ways out there is that way out. I don't mean to get too graphic, but I saw the insides of my wife because they were all like putting them back, like putting her back together, and I was like, oh, bro, I didn't. This is why I didn't want to come in here, But I wanted to see my
Hmm.
son, and
Yeah.
so I
Well, I
go
wanna
ahead.
I wanna answer your question real quick. Yeah, when when my well, ex-wife, when we had our kids, like we were stoked, we were happy, we were all in for it. You know, it's something we wanted. But the thing is, that was our answer to our situation, or her answer to her situation. In no way is it a reflection or what somebody else should do. So yeah,
Mhm.
but
Um,
I'm glad your wife and your kid survived that. My mother had to have an emergency C-section for her third child, and it was complicated, very complicated. So it was a complicated, yeah, it's just complicated.
and
But
that's
I'm
what
not
I
going to go into detail.
yeah, no, you're good. And that was one of the things for me that to be honest with you, it's like I think that there should be I mean, there's other options, right? Like if you don't want the kid, right? Is it laziness that you just don't want to go through cuz excuse
It
me,
could be.
through childbirth?
I if it could be laziness, but isn't that sort of their their what's that word I'm looking for? Their right. I mean, their prerogative. I mean, if somebody doesn't want a child because they don't want to put the effort toward having a child, I mean, that's one of the reasons why abortion is an option.
Uh, Look, I like I get it, right? Like I get it, but um because there would be other things like I'm not gonna I forget her name, but all I have to say is Brenda's got a baby, right? Like I was watching a video of something that reminded me of that song, and was like, okay, so you have these clinics, but you like what would you have on the other hand, right? Like back alley coat hanger, God forbid
Hmm.
thing, but now we've
Yeah.
evolved. So I feel like if you have an idea, which normally you will, you can um it's like the day after stuff. Like I don't agree with that, but again, it's like I don't agree with partial birth abortions.
What's a
I mean,
partial? What is that? Partial what?
partial birth abortion.
What's a partial birth abortion?
So this is where they have the baby, and it's the baby's coming out, but they're I don't want to get graphic, but it's
Well, no, I mean you
basically
don't have to. You don't have to.
it's basically um
I'm gonna
it's
fire up the old Google wagon. Go ahead.
yeah,
Go ahead. I'm listening.
I was trying to think about how to say it without um grossing people out, but it's just a disgusting way to have an abortion. Um,
Oh, right. Here we go. In the U.S., a federal statute defines partial birth abortion as any abortion in which the life of the fetus is terminated after having been extracted from the mother's body to a point past the navel of the fetus, or in the case of a head first presentation, the entire fetal head is outside of the mother's body. Now that's I guess the exact term is intact dilation and extraction. Procedures, recovery complications, medications. This doesn't seem like it's something that's just willy nilly when it's made. That's made right there on the delivery table because the mother decides to. I don't. Anyway, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, here's my thing is like break down the words of like the extraction and how they do it. It's pretty gross, to be honest with you.
Okay,
Um,
here we go. Here we go. Here we got some numbers on this. Complications. This is from Wikipedia, and I know a lot of people are like Wikipedia is bad, but it's all sourced at the bottom. The risks of intact D&E are similar to the risks of a non-intact D&E, and include post-operative infection, hemorrhage, and uterine injury. Overall, the complication rate is low, with rates of serious complications, those requiring blood transfusion, surgery, or hospital treatment ranging from 0 per 1,000 cases to 2.94 per 1,000 cases. The rate of minor complications is approximately 50 in 1,000, which is 5%. The same as a minor complication rate for non-intact D&E, the rate to serious complication is higher in non-intact D&E. Data directly comparing the safety of non-intact to intact D&E are limited. There's no difference in postoperative blood loss or major complications when compared to non-intact D&E. There's no difference in risk of subsequent preterm delivery. The risk of retained tissue is lower since the fetus is removed intact. In some cases, the physician may not be able to remove the fetus intact due to anatomical limitations. This may present a psychological problem for the patient who wishes to view the remains or make a comprehensive autopsy impossible, precluding an accurate postmortem diagnosis of fetal anomalies. So it happens because of of complications that were not known to going to happen. It was just like it happened then and there, like hemorrhaging, blood loss, etc. So it's not something that is just done willy nilly. It's such a low percentage. I don't even think it's really I mean, the percentage is so low. I think it's kind of uh, pointless. I don't see a problem with it as long as it's done for medical necessity. Intact D&E is a target of anti-abortion advocates who believe the procedure illustrates their contention that abortion, and especially late-term abortion, is a taking of a human life and therefore both immoral and illegal. Critics consider the procedure to be an infanticide, a position that may, in the anti-abortion movement, extend to cover all abortions. Some advocates, both for and against abortion rights, see the intact D&E issue as a central battleground for the wider abortion debate, attempting to set legal precedent so as to either gradually reduce or gradually increase access to all abortion methods. So, anyway, well, actually, I'm going to throw this link. Can I throw the link in the descriptions at the moment? I'll have to add it
Yeah.
later. Not a problem. Anyway, go ahead. Go ahead. So I don't. I like it happens at such a low rate. I mean, it seems like the controversy of partial birth abortions is affects such a low rate. It's like a, I don't know. It's like making a mountain out of a molehill. And I don't. And I'm not trying to uh, lower the importance of a woman's choice, because that's or a person's choice to give birth, because I think that's what's important. So anyway, go ahead. He's tending to the child.
Um, let me see here, because I was gonna see. Um, here we go. I'm gonna show you something that might give it a little bit. I haven't watched all of it, but this seems to be a legit.
Oh, is this a video?
Yeah, but here's the thing: is this is a while back.
How long of a video is it?
It's like
Like, I don't mind as long as it's pithy. Like under five
uh
minutes would be perfect.
yeah, it's under 5 minutes, but
All right.
it's basically. Well, I don't want you to get. I just think that it's basically a doctor explaining it and showing you, because apparently that's what I thought, that there are abortions where you literally rip you rip the child limb from limb,
Hmm. I
and
don't think that's the thing.
he shows the tool that they actually, I don't know if that's what they use, but he's actually demonstrating the uh
Is this going
what
to
do you call
show
it?
actual? Is this going to show actual medical procedure?
He's, it looks like he's explaining it. Let me go into it a little bit farther, but yeah, that's
Are we talking about in the instance of of a breech position and they have to use stirrups or not stirrups, forceps?
The what?
There's sometimes when a child's being born, they're what's known as in a breech position. You know how normal birth, head first.
Mm.
In a situation of a breech position, the baby is like feet first. So they have to use a tool, forceps, or they can do it manually by hands and go in there and turn the baby around. So
Yeah, it's let me see. Yeah, it's just an interesting thing because again, no matter what it is, I feel like people are still going like it's gonna have an effect on somebody's mental. You know what I
well,
mean?
yeah,
And that's been
yes,
my
absolutely. But okay, so I completely agree. A woman who wanted to have a child, and for some reason during pregnancy, they lost a child for whatever reason. It absolutely is going to cause a mental trauma for for the person that was pregnant and trying to give birth. But I think that's not so much an issue about abortion, but that's an issue. I think a good argument to make sure we have adequate mental health um, access. So, all right, let's bring this video up real quick. How long of it? Oh, is that does that say 2 hours?
no.
I can't see.
It's like 4 minutes, but I just
Oh,
kind of
okay.
wanted to show because he kind of walks through it. Um, but it's just interesting. Let me know if you can hear it.
The next technique we're going to
Hmm.
demonstrate
Yeah.
is the partial birth abortion. Partial birth abortion is a term that we hear a lot about in the news, but I really can't believe that people really understand what it means. Otherwise, we would not allow this procedure to be performed anywhere, not only in this country, but in the world. But a partial birth abortion is performed when the baby is too far developed in order to either be sucked out with the suction curette or to be able to be dismembered and brought out piece by piece with this forceps. A partial birth abortion or a D and X is very similar to what it says, where we're going to deliver the majority of the baby, and then before the baby's head is delivered, then we're going to actually kill the baby. Now, before the procedure would start, the cervix would have already received those things we talked about called laminaria. Those are the sticks that go into the cervix that would then swell overnight and would open up the cervix because we have a lot more baby to deliver. And this can be performed anywhere up to term because remember, Doe versus Bolton defined mother's health as physical, emotional, psychological, familial, and age. So as long as the physician under those definitions says mother's health is in jeopardy, this procedure can be performed. Now, using an ultrasound to guide, the cervix will be dilated, the speculum would already be in place to open things up, and then using the ultrasound as a guide, this instrument would be placed in the inside through the cervix and would then grab one of the baby's feet. Once that foot is grabbed with that tenaculum, that baby's foot is then brought to the outside. Once that first foot is brought to the outside, then the second foot would be brought to the outside. And then with traction with a baby that is still alive, the baby would then have both legs delivered, would then have its belly delivered. Once the baby is brought further down, first one arm would be delivered. That would be rotated this way. And then the baby is rotated around the other way, and the second arm is delivered. Now, the entire baby from the neck down is now alive and in the abortionist's hands that's performing this procedure. The entire baby, including the head, are already out of the womb, beyond the cervix, and the only thing that's left on the inside of the mother is the baby's head, but that's only just inside the vagina. And baby is moving, baby is alive, baby is intact up to this point. But if the baby then delivers, it's then considered a live birth, and the baby would have to go to the nursery. But before that's allowed to happen, this is when the abortion would actually kill the baby. And the way they do that, if you remember from biology class, there's that connection between the brain and the spinal cord, and that opening at the base of the skull is called the foramen magnum. And that small hole with the baby moving and alive in one hand, a pair of scissors, these are called Metzenbaum scissors. These scissors are then placed into the base of the skull, and these scissors are then placed in through that foramen magnum up into the baby's brain and skull cavity. The scissors are then opened up, and then if that hasn't killed the baby, then one of the suction curettes is then placed through that same hole up into the baby's skull and brain. The suction is applied, and just how you saw how powerful that suction machine is, if it can crush the steel can, then it can definitely kill the baby there on the inside. Once the baby has then been killed and is no longer alive, then the remainder, which is just the baby's head, is then delivered, and the procedure is then completed.
All right. Okay. I think I've seen enough of that. After reading what I read just moments ago, it doesn't seem to line up quite well with that gentleman was saying. It seems almost like he is pitching the idea that during because that what he was demonstrating was a breech position, as if the only thing to do is to kill the baby at that time. I don't think that's exactly what the idea of a partial birth abortion is. I think that guy's way off base. So anyway, interesting. I think you're muted.
Sorry. Sorry. I think that's the issue.
What's that doctor's name, real quick?
What's his name? Dr. Lile.
Dr. Lyle?
But again, the problem is I can show you things that I know that are like legit. What I would say is this: just research it. And there's somebody by the name of Millie Weaver, before she was going to have her second child. She called in for an abortion, air quote, and kind of, again, if they can live with knowing that, like I said, mentally, sure.
Yeah, and that was something else that I had an issue with. He made it sound like the only thing a doctor would be focused on is the woman's mental health. Like, and I'm not trying to not make that a thing, but it's also the physical health is why they would do a partial birth abortion, not just for the woman's mental health. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I just don't understand how you could let. Well, here's, and I'm gonna find the quote for you. And that's the problem, is people don't accept what she said. Let me see here.
Let's see. Dr. Bill Lyle. He's a Focus on the Family. Dr. William Lyle is a board certified obstetrics in gynecology. Yeah. He has served as a hospital OGBYN department chair and as an instructor with both the University of Florida and Florida State Medical School OGBYN residency programs. A passionate pro-life advocate, Dr. Lyle took over a practice that was the largest provider of abortion services in Pensacola, Florida, and immediately put an end to those services. Ugh. Despicable, in my opinion. He is part of a nationwide network of 500 physicians who voluntarily perform abortion pill reversals and serves as a medical advisor for the Human Life Protection Amendment. What is abortion pill reverse? Oh, if you take the abortion pill, you can reverse it. Interesting. Rebecca Buell Hagen shares her powerful story of pursuing a chemically induced abortion and then experiencing a change of heart, which led to saving her baby's life. Dr. Bill Lyle, pro life OBGYN, explains how abortion pills work, how it affects many reverse, and how this option is being provided to women and teen girls who have second thoughts about having an abortion. Interesting. Huh. Huh. Uh, okay. Interesting. I think the guy is kind of a. I don't when he described that. I don't think that was correct because I've heard that explained before, and I heard the rebuttal on it. I just wish I. It was actually in Congress there was a rebuttal about that. I can't remember off the top of my head what congressional hearing it was about. Shoot, I'll have to look that up and I'll get back with you. But anyway, uh, abortion. I'm for it. Pro-choice, baby.
So again, people are like, hey, especially when I bring this up, they're like, well, that's she's not around anymore, yada yada. But
Who's that?
Margaret Sanger,
Oh, Margaret Sanger. Isn't she the one who like started Planned Parenthood?
she also
Yeah.
is somebody that had proposed to Congress, proposed allowing Congress to solve population problems by appointing a parliament of population.
Okay.
Uh,
And
where
in which ways was she
this
proposing on fixing population problems? I mean, there's
directors representing the various branches of science in the parliament would direct and control the population through birth rates and immigration and direct its distribution over the country according to the national needs, consent with taste, fitness, and interests of the individuals. This is coming from a Plan for Peace birth
Mhm,
control review in 1932,
mhm.
pages 107 through 108. She also, Singer, called the various methods of population control, including abortion, defending the unborn against their own disabilities. Same book. Um, Singer believed that the United States should keep the doors of immigration closed to the entrance of certain aliens whose condition is known to be detrimental to the stamina of the race, such as feeble-minded, idiots,
Hmm.
morons, insane, epileptic, criminal, professional, prostitutes, and others in the class barred by immigration. So
Now,
she was
that
very,
sounds a bit
she's,
eugenics. I
she
wouldn't,
is.
which I totally do not agree with that. However, I don't think that's what Planned Parenthood is today. Or is there any way we practice any form of eugenics in our country today? Back in the 30s, it was a very popular idea within our country, forms of eugenics. That's kind of where Hitler kind of got his idea in the 40s. But
Mm.
it's bad science. It's always been bad science, and it's recognized now as bad science. Then, so I don't.
But here's
Yeah.
here's here's my question, because I think Bill Gates is still a eugenist, and I
Well,
think
it's a
that,
good thing that he's well, he influences a lot of politics, but I've never heard that before.
well, here's the thing. This is my main question. Why in the world is a software developer talking about anything that has to do with vaccines or mandates? And what pissed me off that really made me dislike this man was when he was on a show. You could
Hmm.
probably find it, but he was on a media outlet news or whatever, and they asked him a question about COVID, and he literally smirks, like starts to smile about it, because I think the question was when do you think this is gonna like be over? Why are we asking the software developer, right? Like,
That might be why he smirked. He's like, "Why are you asking me such a
but he
stupid
talks,
question?
but he talks like he knows about these things. Oh
Like
well,
in
there's
which
this, and
capacity?"
he basically like he's okay. So for one, he talked about, well, we're not prepared for a certain type of pandemic, which was prior to COVID.
Mhm.
Um, and then he talked about it again, but it was more of like, where was it? He was talking. I saw a clip where, and I'm gonna see if I can find it, but he was talking about how the Omicron virus, if you get it, is actually better than getting the virus, like than getting
Oh,
the shot.
so
But I'm
wow,
like,
really? He
yeah,
said
that's
that? Interesting.
yeah, yeah. I'll see
That
if I
doesn't
can find it,
sound
but I was like, that's
that
weird.
doesn't sound like a smart thing to say.
Well, it just doesn't sound like anything to say from somebody that makes software. Okay, like I don't
Now
you
hold on. I'm sorry. I got to push back a little. I don't care what somebody's profession is. I think if they have an opinion, free speech, they can share that opinion regardless if they're right or wrong. I think
right.
just because a software engineer is talking about it, I don't think means therefore something nefarious is going on. He's just some dude sharing his opinion on something he probably doesn't know that much about, or does know more, or does know about. I mean, I I can't sit here and all right. So Bill Gates is not the type of person, regardless of what he says, if he's on what position of the whole COVID pandemic he was on. His opinion, even though I think he's allowed to share it, is completely irrelevant to me because he's not part of the medical community and medical consensus when it comes to viruses and pandemics.
Hmm.
He's not part of that crowd, so I wouldn't really go to him for advice. I mean, it's cool he was asked that question. He has that platform to give his answer, but I don't know. I think everybody bitching about him discussing it is kind of just a non sequitur. So
Well, he discussed it through the whole entire pandemic and prior to the pandemic,
mhm,
right?
that's fine.
Um, Me personally, um, I just here's the thing. I don't understand why our whole entire life, growing up as kids, we're taught to ask questions, right? Like
Hold
ask
on,
questions: who, what, when, where, why,
hold
how.
on. Say that again. Say that you were.
Growing up, we
Uh-huh,
we were taught to say, to ask questions: who,
mhm,
what, when, where, why, and
mhm.
how. But when we seem to get into adulthood, it's sit down, shut up. We're not talking about that. You're crazy. And that, you know what I mean? Like that, and it's almost like it just go over here, shut up. You know what I mean? And I always wondered why. Okay, the best way I can describe it is this: if you see, do you know who David Gergen is?
Nope.
Okay, David Gergen is somebody who had served with many different presidents. I think he was like in their cabinets. I think it was Clinton, Bush, maybe even Daddy Bush as well.
Mm,
Um, so when we're just going to call him AJ, so people don't get triggered, decides that he's already broke and like found the whole Bohemian Grove thing and recorded it, and confronts him like, "Hey, what were you doing there?" And he gets irate. You just like, that's your admission of guilt to me, because now you're so defensive that you like, if you didn't do anything, you'd have been like, dude, I didn't do anything. What are you talking about? Like, why are you even coming up to me and talking about this? But I mean, he got angry,
mhm,
right? So that's where I started to go, okay, these people believe in certain things, right?
mhm.
You come across something like the Georgia Guidestones, 5 million.
I have no idea what those are. I don't know what the Bohemian Grove is. I am so lost, my man.
Okay,
You're,
so
you're, you're gonna have to connect these dots for me real quick.
okay, so Bohemian Grove has been going on for a long time. It's a men's club, right? Like they go hang out, is what they say. It's the top people. It's almost like the Bilderberg Group, but it's different. It's a little
Like
different, right?
like the Du Bois group or whatever the fuck it's called.
Right. And so, like, AJ went in and snuck in and was able to record from a distance what these people were doing in the redwood forest. And let me tell you something, it don't look too nice. Again, I don't care what you're doing, but when you start to make policy or decide directions of which things are going to go where,
Mhm.
I have a problem. And that's where I said, look, dude, we've been taken over. America has already been taken over. Okay. And people go, well, we still have freedoms. How is it taken over? These people have agendas, and they've been doing it. Like, look into something. Are you familiar with UN Agenda 21?
I'm reading about the Bohemian Grove. It's a restricted 2,700 acre campground at 20601 Bohemian Avenue in Monte Rio, California, United States, belonging to a private San Francisco-based gentlemen's club known as the Bohemian Club. In mid-July each year, the Bohemian Grove hosts a more than 2 week encampment of some of the most prominent men in the world. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, you can do what you
Weird,
want
really
with it,
shit.
but I'm like, why are they meeting? It's the same thing as the Bilderberg Group meeting. We see them
Mm,
going in. People have recognized them going in. Why are we not like? Why are we fighting each other about Donald Trump and Joe Biden? Like these are the individuals that are behind that. There's policies that are being made behind closed doors, not
mhm.
just for the United States, but for the world, right? The UN, right? United Nations, right? Where did that come from? That was after what, World War II?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Apparently, the oligarchs or the top 1% has funded every single side of every single war since
Mhm.
Napoleon, supposedly, right? Allegedly. If you look at some of the history, these people were able to get back that Napoleon had won the war a couple of days before, and they already knew he had lost. But that caused the stock market at the time to drop, and then everybody bought it up. Like you ever heard of the Rothschilds? That's who did that, right? Like
Oh man,
they
we're really going down this conspiracy theory rabbit hole, huh? Wow, I didn't really want to go down a conspiracy rabbit hole too much. Is
here's the here's
wow.
here's the thing is I just challenge people to look at it. Find the things that you can say, okay, I can verify
Oh
that or
no,
I can't.
no, I do agree with one thing. There's a lot of rich motherfuckers that have way too much influence and lobbying, influence, control, and money in pockets that shouldn't be there. Because that absolutely does
Yeah.
influence policy to the point where it helps them out, helps them retain power, money, resources, etc.,
Hmm.
and keeps the lower man or the lower person down. I completely agree with it. I don't think there's some sort of like dark underbelly conspiracy in the shadows. I just think it's an just like um, an emergent property from the system, sociological and economically throughout the centuries. It just kind of, emerged from the policies that we kept putting in place over time, allowing for this shit to happen. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's some sort of like um, weird like. I mean, it's bad. Don't get me wrong. I don't agree with it. I just don't think it's like what people read into it. They add this whole villainous. Don't get me wrong. There's probably some total vile people a part of these groups and stuff, but I don't think. I think a lot of people see it through a lens that isn't actually happening. Like I said, I think it's an emergent property from over time and the policies put into place to allow that to happen. And they're like, well, it's we can do it. We're just going to do it. So
But
yeah.
here's the thing though, that they use. Okay, so what you were describing a second ago is the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, meaning I'm going to get somewhere in a position of power, and then I'm going to create laws and things that will help me a keep myself in that position,
Hmm.
b help me make the most money while I'm in that position.
Hmm.
Right? That's why you end up getting career
Yeah.
politicians. Personal
Hmm.
opinion. Second off, what are these people doing behind closed doors? I mean, we've literally had footage of them all going to the same place from people around the world that are going behind.
Depends
Now
on who
here's
you ask. For all you know, they're having strange sex parties and having coke and doing
not
lines of
according to
cocaine.
Jim, not
I
according to
was
Jim
I was
Tucker. You-
I was
like
making a joke about it's that Madison Hawthorne made that comment.
was a yeah no I,
What's that
what
congressman? What's that congressman? He's Madison Hawthorne, I think is his name. He's in a wheelchair. He made that comment earlier in the interview. He's like he's a freshman congressman, and he made a remark. A lot of the people he looked up to politically over the decades since he was young. Somebody approached him like, "Hey, you want to come over for this like sex party and blah blah blah." And he was like, "Hey, I got invited to an orgy, and I'm sitting there watching other fellow congressmen doing bumps of cocaine off a key." You know, you didn't hear about that. That's what I was making the joke about. You had to ask what they're doing behind all these closed doors. Oh, they're probably having orgies and doing drugs. I mean, that's what a lot of people do behind closed doors. I'm just saying. The point is, sitting here trying to hypothesize and speculate what they're doing behind closed doors, I think is more of um, less. It's a futile pursuit. I think we see the end result of their get-togethers, and we should better combat that because I think it's easier to focus on the actual outcomes that we can substantially point to rather than speculate what they're doing behind closed doors. Because whatever they're doing behind closed doors, we're just not going to find out. But we can combat the outcomes of what we do see and the policy making that we do see, is what I'm saying. I think it's more pragmatic to focus on what we can fix instead of wasting time worrying about what they're doing behind closed doors. Like they could be doing some very vile things behind closed doors, coming up with very vile policies, et cetera, and et cetera. But I think it's more of utility to focus on what we can see in the outcomes of those policies being made. So,
but and that's the thing is like is this it right here? Let me find it. Yes. Here we go. The official site, Bilderberg meetings. This is their official site, by the way. So if like you want to see it, or I can
oh,
throw
I'm
it in the
fine.
comments so you can.
Oh, I have
Um,
no doubt. I have no doubt that some of the world's richest people get together in different places in the
it's it.
world at different
It's
times of the year and discuss things to keep themselves in power. I don't disagree with that at all. I'm just saying instead of speculating or going down conspiracy holes, that we focus on what we can focus on, what's in front of us, because what's not, if we waste all our time with what's not in front of us, we're just chasing our tail. So because it's easy as long as they can maintain uh, 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 what's that word? Deniability. As long as they can keep denying, because we're not privy to their meetings, then that's all it is. We're sitting here too focused on what they might be discussing instead of the actual end result of what is being lobbied for and voted on. Regardless if it's the Bilderbergs, Rothschilds, Bohemian Grove meetings. What's that one that happens over in what's it, the Devos or whatever meeting they have once a year? I forgot what it's called.
When was this? The 19th. I'm listening to you. I mean, I get it, but I mean, when you've got stuff that's open like this, where you can go, it's the 60. This one was the 67th Bilderberg meeting. It says it's taking place from 30th of May to 2nd of June, in Montreal, Switzerland. About 130 participants from 23 countries have confirmed their attendance. As ever, a diverse group of political leaders and experts from industry, finance, labor, and media have been invited. Academia. The list of the participants is available on the bilderbergmeetings.org.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me see if that.
Yeah,
Uh,
but and yeah, you're going to see a lot of prominently rich people on that list.
but
No
here's the
doubt about it.
thing: the problem is it's against our law for them to go behind closed door and speak on policy with other people
Which
that
law is that? Which law are they
that
breaking?
that I can find it, but yeah, there's a law
Please,
against that.
please do, because I don't think there is a law. I don't think there's a law restricting anybody sitting behind any closed doors talking about any policy. Literally, I mean, I think that's exactly what the First Amendment is for. I mean, if we're talking exclusively within our borders.
There's a difference, though. The president can't just talk about what's really going on. The people that are in the government are sworn to secrecy. That's why they get sworn in
Oh yeah, I
into
mean, it's yeah.
office.
No, I
So
get that. Yeah,
he can't come hang out.
no, I get that. I get like Biden shouldn't be in that meeting discussing national secrets. That I agree with. Yes.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's one of the things that, like, for me was just like, okay, um I'm not did you not plug this in right? You didn't, bro. Now your phone's going to die. Um don't even try to shoot me with your Nerf gun. Um
If you do, well, he's wearing glasses, so he's not going to lose an eye.
yeah, it's
You're going to shoot your eye out, kid.
yeah, it's one of my favorite. But I think one of the things is really, I guess, with talking about things like this for me is just to do the research. Just look. And I'm not saying like I'm right, and I'm not saying that you're right either. I'm just saying no.
I think it depends on where we focus our attention to in order to fix the problem.
But they're the problem, and again, the top 1% of the um the top 1% that are the richest,
Mhm.
um and they're all kind of conspiring together as we're down at the bottom. I think is an issue. I think that's
Oh,
what has
absolutely.
separated us in the very
But
beginning.
I think because of the way society has set itself up over the years, they're allowed to do that. I'm not saying it's morally or ethically right, and I don't want them doing it, but the systems in which we live under allows it to happen. And there's so we so it's the system we need to change, not change those people, but change the systems.
Hmm.
So over time, those people will be reformed, and the actions of all people in situations like that will be reformed. Is I should better say.
But here's the problem. They can always buy somebody. Because if
Well,
somebody
that's
comes up to you and has like all this money that's not going to just change your life, not just your
uh-huh.
intermediate family's life, but like your
Hmm.
family's life,
Yeah.
you know?
Again, because we live under a system that allows that to happen. We need to change that system that allows that to happen. Now, in my uh, humble opinion, as far as I can recognize it,
Go of it.
it's the system of capitalism that we
Mhm.
live under
Right.
that I think allows it to happen. Has it always allowed? Has capitalism always allowed that kind of shit to happen? No, not at all. There's been different forms, and there's been better and worse forms of capitalism. I'll give capitalism the the kudos on getting helping us get out of a feudalist system. Don't get me wrong; it was good for that. But I think as it time has grown and gone by, I think we've reached this late stage system that I think is totally allows for so much corruption, and in order to mitigate that corruption, we need to mitigate the systems that allow that corruption to happen.
No, you're totally right.
I'll take that 1 point for the socialism side. I'm just joking.
um, yeah, no, I just don't. Yeah, I think he's. I'm gonna end up having to get off here in a minute because
No, you're good, and we've actually been going at this for well over an hour. So no,
um, but
I get it.
like you said, I think that people just need to kind of wake up and ask questions and
No,
not
that I
argue.
completely agree.
Yeah.
I that's like before we had this conversation. I mean I know I just cut you off and
No,
apologize,
you're good.
but that's why I said I wanted to have more of a Socratic discussion, more questions and answers,
Hmm.
because yeah, you're absolutely right. We need to ask more questions, especially I think we need to ask more questions between us citizens. And I think if a question is asked, I hate when I ask a question to somebody and all I get is, well, why don't you know that, dumbass? You should use your common sense. Well,
Right.
maybe I don't. Maybe I don't know it from your perspective. Maybe I'm missing a piece of information. Fill me in. I
That's
mean, you know what I mean? And that happens on
yep.
both sides.
Yep.
That happens everywhere. And I'm disgusted by it.
I'm
It's
telling
like,
you, man.
yeah,
You're right. Yeah, no, you're totally right. It like I said when I was disgusted with that, with everybody was like, oh, like there was on the right, there was like Joe Biden crapped his pants. I was like, well, that's not even funny, dude. Because if he did, that looks horrible on America. If he did,
well, it
I'm not saying he did.
depends. It depends.
Is that a no pun intended?
Definitely pun intended. Sorry, I always it's not a that's not about Biden. It's just I always like a nice depends type
Yeah.
of joke. I don't know.
So
Bad on my
and that's the
part.
thing is I was like, you know what, dude? Like I even asked people on the right. I was like, well, you say it's out there, right? Well, show it to me. Cause I like if I don't have firsthand knowledge of something and I feel like I can trust that person,
Mhm.
I'm just not gonna. I'm good, dude. Like,
Yeah.
you
You
know what I
know,
mean?
you just said firsthand knowledge. You and I being lay people, and the majority of us are lay people, unless you're in a position of like authority. And when I say a position of authority, I mean like, it could be even like a position of authority within a discipline of science because they study that day in and day out. They're an authority on that. But us common people, us lay people, we don't we don't have the privilege a lot of times to firsthand knowledge, and we have to go
Most
off the experts, so to say. And I think it's healthy to understand what the proper authority is on a proper topic or situation, and or lesson, or just discipline of science, medical science, politics, philosophy, anything. I mean, I
Mhm,
think it's good to learn on where to source your knowledge, so to say. Because
mhm.
I'm not a biologist, I'm not an astronomist, I'm not. I don't have firsthand knowledge, and I don't have access to it. A lot of it's behind paywalls. Like there's a
Right.
lot of science studies out there that you and I can both go look at and read, not just the abstract, but the actual methodology, the experiments, peer-reviewed journals and all that, but a lot of it's behind paywalls, and we have to spend a ton of money just to access it. And then when we do access it, we don't have the academic know-how to even decipher most of the fucking academic language they use. And there's actually some debate within academia about this. It's like, okay, is academia too elitist for the common person, or is the common person too lazy? It's like there's this middle point where I think within academia, in order for the to have a more uh, 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 knowledgeable society, there needs to be somewhere in the middle where we common folk try to learn more, and at the same time, the academic elitists try to dumb it down for us at a point, so we can regurgitate and understand and reason with the information a lot more. But it just seems like a lot of times that there's no budge, there's no meeting in the middle sometimes, I think so. And
Okay.
I kind of also in a large part put that on the media, because the media should be that intermediate um, institution that helps the common people understand what academia is saying and vice versa. But unfortunately, with stuff like the fair, oh, what's that act in the past? I can't remember, but fair bias doctrine. I can't remember what it was now. Something about journalism. It was back in the '80s that I got rid of it. Anyway, a lot of
Fair.
countries.
What
It's
is
not
it?
fair use. It's not fair use doctrine. It's something else. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway,
Okay.
I think
Okay.
a lot of breakdown of information in society today is shitty journalism. So
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, and but that's what they want, right? Nice.
yeah, whoever they is. Again, I think it's just an emergent property of the systems that we live in. One of those systems is greed. Gotta have that money, and it's all about clickbaits and advertisements. So,
Yeah,
and
and
it's all
that's
about like small little clickbaity type things. It's like, and I said it earlier, it's like, hey, make sure that video is under 5 minutes, make it pithy. But that's because of this bigger broadcast. But a lot of us will go online and just get like little snippets of information, and we're trying to like use a drop of water to fill a whole bucket up. We're like, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. It just
right.
doesn't work that way.
Even with something that's like 5 minutes, it's like, and that's the thing is like, this is what I tell people all the time. I was like, look, dude, you can literally find two different types of doctors that one believes that the jab works, one doesn't. One believes that masks work, one doesn't. And then they have the same type of, um, like, I guess you could call like prestige when it comes to in their field. But then
Hmm.
at some certain point, what happens is, as people, you have a bias. Even
Mm-hmm.
people that are in science, they have a bias,
Hmm.
whether they want
Now,
to, because you can't get
yeah.
rid of that.
Well, no, but science,
Stop sign.
science, the methodology itself is so far the best tool we have as a human species to help eliminate as much bias as possible. That's why there's peer reviewed and there's falsibility of experiments and et cetera and et cetera.
Mm.
But back on the doctor thing, I have noticed like there are people with the title doctor. They're a doctor in some other
Don't
field, or
sit on that.
homeopathy, or they're a resident physician or whatever. They're not, and they're making opinions on a discipline of medical science they don't really know about, or they haven't studied a lot. Like you'll have like a butt doctor talking about viruses. It's like, okay, there's some medical overlap. They probably understand viruses, but to the degree that a virologist understands viruses, I'd rather go to the virologist. Is what I'm saying. So
Hmm.
it's all about knowing proper authority. But I am going to go ahead and start shutting this down. It has
Gotcha.
been, yeah, wow, gone for a while. So I want to thank you for popping up and having this discussion with me, my friend. It was
Yeah,
good.
definitely. Definitely. We can do it again too. You're just
All right.
this kid over here. I can tell when he gets bored because then he starts bothering me, and I'm like, all right,
It's all
dude.
good.
But yeah, I enjoy having these type of conversations because for me, it's like you can't on other social medias. You can't
Mm.
without somebody going, "You're stupid. Go take care of your kid," and you're like, when did
Well,
and that's where I really started to try to figure out, like, for me was like, how did we get to this point in America, right? Because we used to be like somewhat united, where like like we're American, bro. Like
I don't
growing
know.
up
I
for
think
me, it was
I
like,
think I think there's a lot of American history that shows us that we weren't so united either. But that's the topic for another day.
right.
I'm not going to call you stupid. I'm not going to say that, but I am going to say, and thank you for giving me some of your time.
Yeah.
And I think fatherhood's a priority too. So
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
um, absolutely. Have fun later, little
Thank you.
guy.
So you want to
So
come say
all right,
bye?
bye. All right, everybody out there in YouTube land, Twitter land, and Facebook land. You guys have a great night. And again, if you think I'm wrong, drop a comment, email me, tweet me, or face boomer me. I call it face boomer sometimes because, well, that's who's taking over it. Or email me at blazingblasphemer@yahoo.com. All right, I'm out.